Let's get started. So today I have a very special person in front of me, Hernando Santamaria. Hernando is or was a former coach of Mercy College. Mercy College is one of the colleges that I went and played at. At the moment, Hernando has just gotten promoted to an assistant principal for his high school. He is also a soccer coach for his high school. He is also a Spanish teacher for his high school. He is a club soccer coach. He is a college soccer coach. He is a father. Oh my God. This guy does it all.
Full
So
plate.
yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, man. Little background story on Hernando. And I, Hernando was the one that opened the doors to me. One of them, right? Him and Pedro and Juan opened the doors to me when I left Vermont and I moved to Mercy College in New York, in Dobbs Ferry, New York. Hernando was a almost like a father figure to me when I moved there, and he showed me around the city and took care of me in Dobbs Ferry to make sure that I had everything. And he basically opened up his doors and took care of me and showed me along the way how to navigate the city. And we had a lot of fun together after he was done coaching there. And it's just been awesome to see him grow over the last 10, 12 years that I haven't seen him. And, it's every time I call him, it's always an amazing conversation. So I'm excited to bring him today to you and have him talk a little bit about his journey growing up in the soccer community, what it's been like to be a Division I college athlete, what life has been after being a Division I college athlete, being a Division I college coach, or Division II.
Yeah,
Which one?
Division two
Both.
and Division one.
Okay,
Yep.
Division I, Division
Division
II
three as
college
well.
coach, right, and three, right. And what it's been like to grow up in the education system and be a servant to these kids. So it's a pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Thank you, thank you. Finally, we were able to link up and talk shop a little bit, and just almost like two old timers, kind of reminisce on experiences. But as we were saying before, a lot of those experiences are lessons learned, and whatever we can share to everyone else that's out there listening, hopefully we have a little trinket or a little nugget for you today. So I'm excited to get going.
Yeah. So Fernando, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Where do you come from? Where'd you grow up? What was soccer like for you at a young age? And yeah, just start telling the story.
Yeah, so actually my soccer story starts a little bit later than your average soccer child. I actually started playing at 9 when I first moved down to Colombia. I was born here in the U.S. From Colombian parents, uh, first generation. Um, but home pulled them, and they wanted to go back and give us a better life in a way because we grew up in a not so great area. My brother and I. So when we moved down, it was a beautiful city to be growing up in. And definitely the fact that I was able to connect to both cultures was I think the big priority, being able to learn how to speak Spanish and keep my English. So when I get down there, I actually start playing at the age of 9. And really the big reason why was that was the only sport that um, kids my age were playing, right? This concept of maybe playing another sport like basketball or baseball wasn't a thing. So if I wanted to make friends and connect, um, I had to adapt to that and to learn how to play soccer. So, um, but obviously, lucky for me, it ran in my blood. My dad played. I had uncles that were lucky enough to play pro down in Colombia in the mid '60s. So it was definitely there in the genes. So it just needed a little bit more exploring.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had to use soccer almost like a language, like a way to communicate or a way to fit into a type of community, right?
Yeah, because the biggest thing was, like you said, communication. Like I just didn't speak the language. I understood it. I could say piece together a couple words, but not really fully communicate. And again, the sense of belonging is big. So even at that age, right? It was like I just wanted to feel wanted and belong to something, and that did it for me. That created a ton of connections that I still have till this day, and that was the biggest factor to it.
Right on. So you were born in the US,
hmm
you moved to Colombia when you were 9, and
hmm
then how long were you in Colombia for?
So I came back when I was 19, about to turn 20.
Oh
So I did
wow.
most of my schooling there. Did 1 year in college, which was a disaster academically. So coming back to the States at an older age was a little bit of a fresh start, which was great. Um, Growing up, I played anywhere and anywhere, from 5v5 on the streets with stones, right, as your goals, or sneakers as your goals, a tennis ball as your soccer ball, or whatever we can piece together to play. Um, to being in front of 13,000 um, towards the end, right, and playing at the high school level, playing through middle school, um, getting coached by fabulous people down in Colombia. Really shaped what I wanted to do when I got back to the States was, hey, I got to find a way to make the soccer thing work, and not necessarily thinking about the pro. It was more thinking about the day to day. Like I need this in order to achieve my next step, which was academics. Like I had to make sure that I got into college, and soccer was going to be that vehicle.
Right on. What was that experience like in Colombia? I know you coach a lot of club soccer here in the US, and obviously we have a very different system. You talk about playing in the streets and using different types of balls as your pickup games. Um,
Yeah,
when did you enter a club in Colombia, and what was that experience like?
yeah. When I first made my first big club, I think I was 12, um, 11, maybe turning 12. I uh, I got into this club called Envigado Football Club. Um, that right now are like some of the clubs. That's one of the clubs that really exports players. They're not looking for national titles at the pro level. They're actually looking to sell. So they're a mid-table team. Happy to be there, but at the youth level, it's almost impossible to break through. Um, and for me, I was very lucky through my tryout system. The funny part about the story, and actually one of the coaches when I went back down a few years ago brought this up to me because I just didn't remember, right? Like it was so, and he was like, "Do you remember your tryout?" I was like, "I remember it was with some older kids, but nothing out of the ordinary, right? Like I was just playing." He goes, "Well, the kids you were trying out with at your age were 16, and you got lit up that whole practice." And I'm like, okay, like, where are you going with this? Like, then it's odd. Then if I got lit up as a goalkeeper, um, it's not a good sign. And he goes, no, like for us, it was when we looked at it, it was your perseverance. Like you just kept coming back, kept coming back, kept coming back, and during the 2 hour session, it was just like you were, kind of setting a standard for yourself. So now when you trained with your age group, there was a big little bit of a separation at that age just because of the mindset. And I was like, wow, like again, I'm thinking I'm playing soccer. I just
Yeah.
didn't know I was, getting looked at, and I'm happy to hear that because again, I think a lot of people go without those compliments on a like just not thanking or fishing for compliments, but it's nice to hear once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you had a special trait in you that obviously has carried on for the rest of your life, and obviously has taken you to this place that you're currently in, right? Because you've grown so much, man. I mean, I hear everything that you're doing, and like I said, we're talking about it a little bit before, right? Like the type of school, and we'll get into this, the type of school that you're in for you to be
Hmm.
an assistant principal, right? And not to throw the race card out there, but very rare do you see a Hispanic principal at an all white, predominantly white school. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds
Obviously,
like
we'll touch base on that, but yeah,
it,
yeah.
it,
It's
and
it's
it's
a
that, right?
difficult career path.
Yeah, and it's that trait of perseverance and keep going, keep going, keep going. And like you said, you didn't know it at that point. It was just who you were, right? And it's something that you brought to the table, and obviously these professionals they see that and that
Hmm.
and sometimes it's hard to be under it's hard to be not the best one, right? But there's certain traits that some people are able to see, and it's I think that's a great message to send out to the kids, if you're listening to this, is to just get up and keep going, keep
Yeah,
on going.
yeah.
And I think both of us have seen many kids, that have not been the best club players, right? And but they were very persistent and they were very consistent. And I think sometimes it's those players that end up becoming the professional athletes, right? Because they're just so good at keep getting up. And sometimes we see a lot of great players at a young age that end up burning out or end up losing focus and then steer off. Um,
Hmm.
so and I'm curious to hear some of those experiences that you've seen at the college level because you've dealt with a lot of different types of players. Um, and so in your club experience, so you start playing for an older team, and then you get brought down to a similar age group. And what's that like?
Hmm.
What happens
So
next?
yeah, so from there, once that trial by fire, pretty much, and I get brought down to try out with the age groups. Not that they had an A and B team, but we had branch teams. So Envigado had its own academy, but within that, um, kids that they wanted to still monitor went to that branch team. Um, so I was like, great, like, oh, cool. In my head, I already started playing what was going to turn out like. Um, because at the time, the funny story was I was on my state team for basketball and winning national championships. So for me, it was like, oh, the soccer thing's like a secondary thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I was already playing this narrative in my head of like, oh, I'll make this branch team, I'll play like, and no, at the end of the day, I made it into the academy team. It probably was 60 of us. Um, as you well know, they're looking to replenish, not overhaul. So they're looking for particular pieces, and I happen to be one of them. And I lived in Colombia. I lived in a closed community, so a gated community. Um, and I was very fortunate to that my starting center back was one of the kids in my community. So it was great. Like I wasn't starting from zero. I had a companion, right? Like um, anything went wrong, it was the two of us. Um, but man, like once those teams got made up, and it was like, all right, like let's go. Like we just got after it. Um, a few of the kids that I played with, I think two or three made it pro, but one of them played in a Copa America. So like this is the type of caliber of kids that I was playing with. So again, you're 12. You're not thinking that you're going to play starting center mid against Argentina in a Copa America. Like you're just like, having fun. Um, so it was unbelievable. I mean, we had three coaches. The head coach played pro as well, and one of their teams in Medellin, he was really well known. He was the state coach as well. Um, so I was very lucky that I had a drawing to him, and anywhere he went, he took me with him. But that year that I was with him, especially in the academy, was unbelievable. Cause just teachings, the knowledge, the biggest thing, the care. Um, because I think we grew up in systems that care wasn't a thing, right? Like it wasn't this like you play, so it was the technical, the tactical, right? The player in you, but not really the person. So that wasn't always a thing. With him, it was a little bit different, and he started to introduce that kind of like overall view of a kid. At the end of the day, we were kids, right? Like we weren't a moneymaker or a business. Like we were a kid, and that was like the biggest thing, right? Like just to sit down, have conversations, even at 12, right? As simple questionings are about soccer or life, like he just made it a priority that each and every one of us had face to face time with him. So it was fantastic.
Right on. And now too, go over a little bit about the differences from the U.S. and obviously Colombia. Now, for these academies, did you have to play to did you have to pay to play there, or were you invited and then everything was taken care of? How does that work over there?
Yeah, that's a great question for us down there. Obviously, um, and I'll explain it a little bit later too, because it's a lot of teams down there are getting this pay to play system. So back then, no, there was your kind of your local leagues at all various age groups. For us, we did it calendar year, but every 2 years was one team. So in my case, I'm an '84, right? I would stay in that age group 2 years before I aged out. So I would play '83, '84, '84, '85, and then age out to the next category, right, or uh, the next group. Um, so back then, no, it was very, I started off with, like I said, with my residence team, right? Like our kid, and I call him a kid because he must have been in his mid 20s when he was coaching us. We started playing there, playing the local leagues, and then coaches and scouts were looking at you and picking off, and going into tryouts. And it wasn't
Right.
this pay to play system. It was like we weren't talking about managers and people trying to get you placed in. It was legit competition, right?
Right.
So, and
But
then another good thing was like you weren't thinking of that when you were playing, right? Like
right.
when you were in
But
these leagues, it was just like I'm playing with my buddies, and then I happen to see a guy in the balcony that's watching our game, and
right.
I'm the next guy up.
But how are these clubs funded? Are they because here in the US, right, like we pay a fee to be a part of a
Hmm.
team. So we had to pay tournament fees, registration fees, all these fees to play. So in the US, ideally money moves a needle, right? If
Hmm.
you have funds, you can play for the bigger clubs that have access to the bigger tournaments, but it's all paid for by the parent, right?
Yeah,
Was it different? Like who funded the club, or how did you pay for your fees, or who paid for the fees?
yeah. So for us, in our case, going through the academy system, everything went through the pro team, right? So because we were the line that drove, the financial component of the pro team. But we also got a lot of our fees paid for by our city. So, right, like it was budgeted within our city. Um, and Envigado being a decent sized city, like it had its ways of taking care of it. Um, None of this, like at times what happens in countries like that, like the coach will approach your dad kind of separately, not in plain sight, and try to figure out $10 here, $20 there. Like, no, it was like kind of straight up, like, this is what we're doing. You're with us. Like, don't worry about, all you got to worry about is, in my case, shin guards, cleats, and gloves, and everything else was taken care of by the club. Um, with that said, obviously we don't have the luxuries and technologies that we have now, but you know, they got you,
Yeah.
they got the job done.
what allowed you to play, right? It allowed you to focus on the biggest thing, which is playing, and not have to worry
Yeah.
about like, can I actually play here? Because I think that's one of the biggest things we see in the U.S. We have amazing players, right? But particularly in like my town, um, unless you have money, like you can't play for a big club. And now we have these MLS Next, which I think is great if they're paying for the fees. I'm still not very sure how that's working, but for most clubs, like I remember growing up, we had to pay the fees. And I was fortunate enough that I had our manager was basically funding, a lot of the
Hmm.
Hispanic kids, and she was just taking care of the fees for us. Like there was no way I could pay. It was like $4,000 a year, $5,000 a year. Like we barely had enough to make ends meet, right? And so my parents, there was no way they were going to pay for that. Like even though
Yeah.
they would love to, they just couldn't. And so it sounds like in your scenario and in your country, the way the system's set up is the pro team is set as an investment. They're creating an
Hmm.
investment in the youth and the cities in it together, right? And if it's all around the country, then it sounds like the country is invested in the youth to help them get out and continue
Yeah.
to move
I
forward.
mean, in the pro setting down in Colombia, like everything, like you're gonna have most of these are private entities, right? Um, and private owners. I think the key word is an investment, right? If you hit a home run on a player, it's 3 4 years of everyone having guaranteed salaries, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's the approach that the club team took because they, as much as the competitor inside of all those people playing pro for the club, right? Like the 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 one thing that's clear is that like we want to sell you and we want to sell you quick, right? Get you your pro experience, get you your showcasing, and then get you out. Um, and we've seen that throughout. Like I know a lot of the population that we're talking to right now follows Champions League. Like one of those players throughout that came out of the ranks with us was James Rodriguez. Like right, like and he traveled 1,000 miles just to be in this academy. Um, Another one for the Higuain that played for Inter. Like they're traveling because they know that their best option is coming to that club team that I was a part of, right? Like that
Yeah.
academy, because that's going to be their way out. Because at 16 or 17, they're going to be out.
Yeah.
Um, so and and I think the biggest thing is it works in connection with the city. Like those are big names that are going to be affiliated for a lifetime with the city, right? So
Right.
it's just a big selling point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where you were talking about how in other clubs you weren't just a number, right? Because it sounds like in other places as well, they start looking at you as a number, and it's like tactical, technical, like let's just worry about the soccer. I don't really care
Mm-hmm.
about what's going on in your life or your feelings. Suck it up. Let's get to work, right? And it sounds like you had a different experience. And what's very interesting, obviously, I was able to see you coach, and I saw you coach at the club level. I saw you coach at the college level. I was able to, have you as a coach. And I think that was the difference that you provided to everybody around you is that you have that caring side where you did above and beyond for every player. You drove me around the city, you showed me all those things. And when I look at the amount of respect that you receive by everybody around you, including your club players, like I remember when you were coaching the younger girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like everybody loves Santi. Everybody, you're everybody's number one fan, and I think that's a huge part of it, right? You got to experience what a good coach should look like and what it really means to take care of a player, and that means in and outside of the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate enough to see it on my end. I was very fortunate to see a lot of the bad as well, right? And when it came to molding what I wanted to be, I think I chose that route of caring. It's a lot more investment. It's a lot harder um, than be the stern, iron fist kind of leader. Yeah, and again, I know people choose players, like not only the financial component, like you were saying before, but the results component. Um, the results component as well comes into play, right? So as an adult, like you're looking at your next job through the lenses of your results. So that comes into play as well. But that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. And so you grew up in this club, and then like why did you choose to come back to the States? Was that a choice of yours? Was it because you weren't able to play professional from there and you decided to make the move? What was the main reason that you came back to the States?
Yeah, that's actually a great personal question. It wasn't any of that. It was now family stability, right? Living a certain lifestyle and having certain luxuries, right? In a third world country can come and go like that. So for us, it was more like a family situation of, hey, we're okay, but can we be better, right? Like, hey, we're okay, we're business owners, but when is the well going to dry up? And at the end of the day, I think it was a family move. I was still, even though adult, but still young and not in a position to make decisions by myself yet. Um, yeah, so my mom and I just took a leap of faith. We came into the States, kind of rolling the dice a bit and going from there and seeing what came out of it. I knew the one consistent that was going to help me shape everything was being able to play football, right, and play with just keep playing, right? Like something would come out of it. Um, and in my case, again, very very lucky that it did.
So how did that work out? So you come to the States at
Hmm.
19. So you're already done with your high school um,
Hmm.
academics, right? How did
Yep.
you get into a university, and how did you end up at a Division 1 school playing? Um, like
For
what was
me, it
that
was it
process
was
like?
it was, and this is the nice thing about kind of reminiscing and looking back, because you don't realize in the moment what's really going on. So for me, actually, a friend of mine that I grew up with in Colombia was like, hey, I have a cousin down up there that can help you. He's in the soccer world, whatever you can do. And that's how it just kind of snowballed. He connected me with this guy with this guy. And uh, I came the first week of January. So I was trying to get some indoor, like just figuring it out, like just kind of tagging on with these guys that have done it, right? That in similar scenarios came by themselves to this country and figured it out, right? Like, so they took me in as the little brother, right? Like they were like, all right, like we're gonna go play here. You're in and you're out. Um, Trying to figure it out, trying to get a job. Like as funny as it sounds, and I just said this to my sisters-in-law yesterday. Like my first job was at a McDonald's. First job was at a McDonald's on one of the busiest streets in New York City. Working the night shift so I can have weekends open to go play. Like, and I loved it. Like at 19, like I'm getting a paycheck and I'm playing and I'm getting a little money for playing indoor. Like, awesome. So that's how it started for me. That turned into, once the season changed, hey, they need a goalkeeper here, they need a goalkeeper there. And long story short, I'm actually playing for a U23 Italian team out of Brooklyn, and I lived in the Bronx. So to give you an idea, that's probably like an hour and 15-minute train ride. Um, and we're playing LIU Brooklyn, Long Island University Brooklyn. Again, no clue. I'm just playing. And yeah, some guy comes out of the stands, a coach that you played for as well, came out of the stands and he was like, "Hey, what's your situation?" I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even understand what your question is. Like, and it wasn't a language barrier thing. It was just like, what do you mean? Like, I'm here playing, I'm working, I'm fine. What do you mean? What situation? So, uh, broke it down. Hey, I just took over this program, a small Division I school in Jersey City, New Jersey. No clue where that was. Um, Looking for a goalkeeper. What's your situation? And I'm like, hey, yeah, I did my SATs. I did, I have my grades, and yeah, I'm down. Like whatever it takes, and that's where it went off. But with that said, it also led to a lot of hiccups that I wish I knew at a younger age. That you know, um, what I'm going to lead into is the academic component. Like that was a disaster.
Eye opening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for those that don't know what happens in New York City or in Queens, right? Queens in particular, I think, right? There's this big
Yep.
soccer community, huge, huge soccer community. Soccer in almost every gymnasium. That's for the first time I was introduced to the futsal, right? And Juan, our good friend, is amazing at futsal and spends his weekends playing like 9 games
Yeah.
every weekend, right? There's a huge community of really, really good soccer, amazing soccer, amazing players. And it's almost like it's underground, like money making machine for some
Yep.
people, where people make a living out of it too, right?
Yep.
And so everybody's somewhat living with the same dream too. And fortunately, you had the academics to be able to take that step forward. But I think there's a lot of people there that you're gonna find some amazing players that you're wondering, like, how come this guy doesn't play professional, or how come this guy
Yep.
doesn't play in college. And it's probably that it's the academic side, which you had.
Yeah. And the
And
distractions, right? Like the
yeah,
distractions of
the city.
being in a big city and making decisions by yourself. And I think again, what helped me was there was a major focus on I have to get into college, like whatever my motivation was, right? Like call it my parents, call it myself, like I just needed that paper. Like that was
Yeah,
like a hyper focus of mine. It's just like at any level, doesn't matter how I get it, like I have to get it. Like I know that's going to propel me into the next steps, but like right to your point, like the academics, like I was a victim of that. My grades were terrible, my SATs were terrible, uh but no one told me that. Like literally in Columbia, our guidance counselors, they weren't in a position to send someone, especially through athletics, to colleges, right? Like so for me, like that was a harsh reality. Like getting that ineligible letter from the NCAA. Like I just, what does this even mean, right? And now your adults that you're confiding in are not helping you because a decision's been made over you that right, that what we were talking about before about that care, like no one really
yeah,
cared. Like now it became a
yeah,
business, so
yeah,
that was the scary part.
yeah. Well, the intentions were very different, right? Um, and
Yeah.
so you ran into these hiccups. What were some of those hiccups that you ran right right in as you were getting into college?
Yeah, so really not knowing where to go, where to apply, like trying to go on the internet and figuring it out. I mean, for I was trying to just get in somewhere, right? Like I said before, like my hyper focus was that I gotta get in, like I gotta make this work. And not having a plan and not having a path, like that was the biggest hiccup, and not having adults by me, like God bless my mother, but I can't go to her and be like, hey, what's your experience with this? Like, she's never done it.
Yeah,
She hasn't graduated high school. Like, how am I going to rely on someone like that just knows hard work? Um, so, I get sent this sign, this person in front of me that will help me through it and guide me through it. And I thought that was it. But the first set of hiccups, it was that, like, that's where it all started to kind of spiral was I get a letter from the NCAA mid-July and like, hey, you're ineligible, right? Like a preliminary decision.
This is the first year you're about, because in August, right, the season starts. Like end of August is when you start
Yeah.
preseason.
Yep.
And so you get set up to go to St. Peter's.
St. Peter's College, small D1 in Jersey City. Man, I'm excited. Like, I'm busting my butt to have, some money in my pocket, trying to take care of the finances and whatever it takes just to be there.
Yeah.
And around mid-July, maybe like 2-3 weeks before we even start,
And
I
so
get that first letter.
you apply to school, you got into the school, you
Mm-hmm.
did your
Okay.
NCAA clearinghouse,
Yep.
and then you signed your, did you get a scholarship? You signed a letter of intent.
We'll talk about that one in a second, because it all goes tied in, right? Like, the not knowing. So you're going into this situation blindly. You don't know what ineligible means, right? Like, you go to your coaching staff like, hey, what does this mean? And then they're like, no, it's a preliminary thing. You'll be fine by the start of preseason. We'll figure it out. So I go through the 2 weeks of preseason, right? Now add the financial piece. Like, I don't know how I'm paying for this, right? And no scholarship was offered, right? Like, my conversations at now that I'm in preseason were like, no, take out your student loans. By the time you graduate, you pay $150 a month. You won't even feel it by the time you get a job and stuff like that. So I go back to my parents. I'm like, hey, I owe X amount, and the coach is telling me this, blah blah blah, and like, good Hispanic parents, they're like, yeah, if he's telling you to do that, like, that's the way it is, right? So I go through 2 weeks of preseason, um, and things start to get dicey mentally, right? Like, just not knowing the system in regards to how this coach is, right? Like, that's one thing that comes into play. Quickly, it turned from this guy that, patted me on the back and held my hand through the process to a guy that's like, it's completely business. I'll send you home right now, right? Like, I'm not used to that. Like, that treatment for me was terrible. And man, I mean, the fitness, like, these, I'm gonna call it standardized tests, but it's like, that never dictated who I was as a player, but it labeled me very quickly as unfit. But it wasn't it wasn't my talent that dictated that. So yeah, those 2 weeks were terrible. As I got my legs a little stronger and stuff like that, like, I really made a push to win a spot on a starting team, or just be seen and be like, oh, okay, he could be a good number two. First day of the season, we're about to go to Hofstra. The day before we go to Hofstra, the coach brings me in and was like, hey, I wasn't aware that you were ineligible. I was like, no, I showed you the letter 3 weeks ago. Like, what are you talking about? He goes, no, like, pretty much your academics were a crime. Like, that's how bad my academics were. So now attach another label, like, academically unfit, right? So, man, that first year is just piling on and piling on of labels and judgments that there's weird you. And now the one thing that got you out of it, which was the football and the soccer and the camaraderie, you have no access to. Like, I only saw my friends for dinner. So imagine going through 18 hours of not being part of something. And you're brand new to the country, and you're brand new to the system. It's like, it was just
Yeah.
getting bashed in left and right.
So this amazing dream all of a sudden turns into a nightmare. Now you're stuck in a. So you're still in school though, right? Like you're stuck in the school. You
So
had
I
to
stayed. Yep.
you had to get your grades up. You had to become eligible to play for the next season for spring,
For the next season. Yep.
right? So now you're sitting out for an entire year. Um, yeah, and then you basically don't become part of a team anymore, right?
Yeah.
Similar to like when injuries happen in these type of scenarios, and it happened to me quite a bit of times. Same thing. You're no longer part of the locker room jokes, right? There's all this
Yeah.
conversation happening that happened at practice or that happened during the game, and you're just kind of sitting there, on the side, just
Yeah. Yeah.
haha,
You're like,
like
oh, wish I was there.
yeah, and it makes it really difficult. And I think that's one of the most challenging things that I experienced at that level too was when you go into a community like that, and once again we talk about soccer being a language, and we talk about having that camaraderie being a language, a way to communicate. When that thing's pulled out, especially in a new country, not really knowing many people, right? And then you start wondering like, did I even make the right move? Like, should I
Yeah.
just, because it's no longer fun,
No.
right?
No. No. No.
And you,
It became a burden. It was very difficult because like I couldn't go back to Queens to play because I would have forfeited a year,
mhm,
right? So now the little stream of income that I had from playing outdoor and indoor, right? Like, 20 bucks here,
time.
20 bucks there. Like for a college kid, like you're coming in with some money in your pocket for the week. Um, that's completely cut off, right? Going back to the U23s that I was at when I got recruited, like that was completely cut off.
Mhm.
So literally I didn't touch a soccer ball for almost 14 months just because I couldn't.
So you couldn't even play or practice with the team.
I couldn't do anything. I was in full complete shutdown mode. The only thing I could do was study halls.
Go to school. Mm.
So that year was like completely get your academics up. Um and it was one thing if it was like dictated by the coaching staff, but it was like dictated by an entity that just saw you as that number, right? Like you're an applicant. Um Like it was the coaching staff, like, oh man, like honestly, let's shut you down for like 2 months and get your grades up, and this is what we're gonna do for you. I think it would be a little bit smoother, but it was just such a harsh reality not being able to do that, and then to pretend to be that, the next August being able to say like, oh, I'm in complete soccer shape. Like, no, it's
Yeah,
bogus.
that's difficult. Okay, and so now let's go fast forward to what happens next. So you end up you can't play for a year, and so you sit
Hmm.
out. And then what
Yep.
happens next after that? Are you able to play the next season? Were you able to get your grades up?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Not great, not great, right? Still trying to navigate what I wanted to do and career paths and stuff like that. And that year, career path wise, I was like, you know what? Let me get into teaching. Like, um, let me get down that road and almost take it easy, right? Like in a way, like get into teaching and teach Spanish. I'm fluent already, so that's three-quarters of the battle there. And ended up being the best decision in the long run for me. So once I got that kind of squared away, then August came around, but still, it was so hard to break the labels already, right? Like it was like again unfit, right? Like not capable of passing a beep test. Like it, I was always kind of deemed into that. And again, I was like, I'm a goalkeeper. I don't need that. Like right, like I'm trying to play all these excuses in my head. I'm like, but I don't need that. Like if I was unfit during goalkeeping training, then yeah, like if I was extremely tired during a game, like yeah, I get that, but like it was never that. It was always like the stupid beep test in the mile. Like if I never passed those, like I could never see the inside of the field. So year two was difficult because that was a very good team that underachieved. And if I had to look back, it was just due to burnout. Like we were going 4 sessions a day, 4 sessions on the field, fitness included. You start off hot, you peak too early, and then you slid at the end, and that's what happened to us. Because this is a team that that had returning players that had just won a conference 2 years before that. That should have been hitting a really good stride, but we can kind of look at it from different lenses, and I just think that that was a big component of it. Like you're waking up at 5 a.m. so for 6 o'clock practice, you're going 6 to 8, 10 to 12, 2 to 4, 6 to 8 again, and do it all over again. It was like Groundhog's Day. So yeah, in that year, I don't see the field. There's four of us. Returning goalkeeper that lost his spot, a freshman that won the spot, and now it's like, oh man, now that hill just got harder.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think for being up above 500 that year, like we just underachieved.
Yeah. And so you were a freshman at this point? Would that make you first year, right? You were a
Yep.
sophomore in
So I would
school,
have
but a
been
first year.
yeah. So I would have been academically a sophomore, but eligibility wise for soccer, I was a freshman.
Okay. And then what happens next? Obviously now a freshman is in the starting position.
Yeah.
Right? How
So
does
freshman's in a starting position.
how do you stay engaged, man? And once again, like I'll use a little bit of my experience. I didn't have that
Mm-hmm.
experience in the sense that like I earned up my spot as a freshman, right? My story goes a little different. My injuries was the one thing that took me out, and that was very difficult
Mm-hmm.
for me, right? Because I knew I had a starting position. Similar story, I think my story takes a little bit. I experienced both. I experienced the overwork. Also, Vermont was a very athletic focused type of environment, and it was conditioning was big, and I was big in conditioning. Like I didn't have a problem with that, but I do think that it was slightly overdone as well now looking back. And then obviously for in my scenario it was like the partying on the side too, that right, that amount of work and the amount of partying, not enough rest, obviously led to those injuries. But I did see a lot of players that weren't also partying that did end up getting injured, and we had a
Mm-hmm.
very similar situation that season where we went 7-0. I believe the first 7 games we took off, take winning every game, and then all of a sudden it's like we lost like 7 of the starting 11 due to injuries. And I mean, what
Yeah.
is the common factor, right? And
Yeah.
we experienced that for 2 years in a row. And then that's when they started monitoring like heart rates and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, Vermont wins like 3 seasons in a row right after I leave. And so big learning experience by the school, which is great,
Yeah.
right? But you see it a lot. The overwork, takes players out and makes the experience not as fun.
Yeah.
Um, but how did you stay engaged in being, now you're 2 years into the school, you're not playing. What happens next?
So now I come to a crossroads at that spring on what I want to do. Right? It's just, man, playing was so much a part of who I was, like, and who I am. To be honest,
Mhm.
like, so much of your identity, like that is such an identity marker for all of us, right? Like, and you're like, man, I'm not playing. That's the one thing I'm connected to that is is so important. And the motivation was little, honestly. Like the motivation was little because it was all, I hate to say it, like it was all results based, right? Like the more I worked, the more I worked and saw no results. It was just like easy to fall into this trap, and I did. I really did, and it was the trap of like I just don't want to do this. Like I I don't. I love it here. I love my friends. I was iffy about the coaching staff, right? Um, like I wanted to feel wanted and connected, and I just didn't get that there, right?
Yeah.
So I explored my options, going D2, but same thing. I was just finding the same lineage of coaches, right? Like now I'm a little bit older. Now I've been through the hiccups. Like now I'm just a little weary of who I'm talking to. Like I, I'm I'm not looking for excuses, but it was just like, oh my, is everyone just cut from the same cloth? Like this is not what I'm looking for in an experience. And again, like I'm having this conversation with you, and I think that you know me better than a lot. Like I'm not one to like not blame myself. Like I blame myself. Like I blame myself. Like I blame myself for not adapting, being hard headed, right? Like you want me to pass this mile, I got to figure out how to pass this mile. But
Yeah.
at the cost of what, right? Like, and you said it yourself, like you lost seven out of your 11 starters because they're
Yeah.
probably thinking, I've got to pass this mile.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
so it was hard.
we had guys who lost their vision in the fitness test. Like we're
Yeah.
dragging guys across, right? And what comes out of there obviously is the camaraderie and like we stand up for our teammates and we hold you up. But then it's kind of like, how efficient is this if the guy can't even see, like, and we're dragging him into the finish line? You know, it's
Yeah.
like it looks cool on a highlight video, but
Yeah.
you know, like how beneficial was that to the player and his recovery and future? Um, and it just sounds like obviously you and I experienced this with all the international players too. We talk about Malik. Malik had a very difficult time at Vermont as well, and he came from Guinea, and he just hated the conditioning. Right, he didn't understand a lot of it. Some of the other guys when we were in New York, um, they all struggled with it. They all struggled with understanding why we had to do so much fitness, and they stuck to their to their beliefs. They fought the coach every single time, and it's just different systems, right? In the American culture, conditioning is a big thing. At least in the high schools that I went to, it was in that environment. So for me, it was very normal. Um, and I always pride myself in the fitness side. But I saw it with a lot of the international players, like they struggled, and and it sounds like because everywhere else they focus on the ball. what
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what can you do with the
And,
ball?
and that's like, I was saying before, like that label, like I just never got a chance to kind of break that label off of me, right? Like take
Yeah,
that label off because put me in goal and let me do what I do, right? Like, um, and it was minimal. So by the time the second year came around, I was, I'm a full 14 months behind everyone else. Like even a freshman kid that's 3, 4 years younger than me, he's playing like I wasn't, right? And and that just became a weight on my back that I'm like, man, I gotta jump ship. And I'm looking at these coaches, I'm looking at these programs, and yeah, I've got friends here and there now, right? That I've met through soccer, but like I just can't go through this. Like I'm not asking you to guarantee me like that you're gonna play me, but like man, like let me play in practice. Like let me
yeah,
do something where I can showcase myself,
yeah.
right? Like and that became a major handcuff, and I end up exploring, I end up applying, I end up looking at other places and, getting similar deals, or in this case, no deals, right? Like, come for free and we'll figure it out. And if you deserve some money down the road, we'll give it, for your junior and senior year. And I'm like, okay, but I'm paying the same cost. Like, it's not like you're, you're down, you're
There's no guarantee.
downsizing the financial, right? So I end up staying, and I end up staying for that same coach as well. But that year now was a little bit different, right? Like now there were certain fitness tests that I kind of focused on, that I was like, well, I'm gonna pass this just to get this guy off my back. Like that was my motivation. Like I'm tired of being doing this extra fitness and stuff like that. The one thing I remember that year and we were very successful that year. Um, and I think you remember this too. For in your instance with this coach was the tournament, was the soccer, was the 7v7 ABA tournament, right? If you won, you didn't have to do a fitness test. Man, and that for me stuck with me because I was lights out on on a very poor team. Um, and and that just gave me that boost that I needed. I ended up losing. I lost in the final to bogus PK, but whatever. Um, but funny what you remember, right? But it was just like that motivation. I was like, I can beat this kid out. I just need a chance. And now I had created that for myself. Um, And at the start of the year, I'm like, okay, he's the starter, all good. Now I'm just engaged, right? Like I'm just motivated. I'm like, yo, this kid slips up and I'm there. This kid slips up and I'm there. And like, not wishing evil on him at all.
Yeah.
Like I really like the kid. Like we had a great relationship, but I'm like, man, I just want to play. Like he messes up, I'm right there. And I was just salivating at the jaw, like waiting for that spot. Um, and I got it. I got a nod, and for me, I was like, great, right? Like finally, like getting to feel that first game, and I played a little bit in the preseason. We split some time, but you know how it is. Like everyone gets minutes, and then it's very different when you get 90 minutes in a game, in a season game. And for us, for me especially, it was a thrill. Getting to go, through that full day and really through the full week of work, like, hey, you're getting to start this week,
Yeah.
and now preparing a little bit differently.
Yeah, and well, for goalkeepers is slightly different, right? Like when you get your 90 minutes, like you pretty much have a guaranteed spot. Like you're not coming out for the most part, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't see it very often where they're like, all right, 45 minutes to this first keeper and 45 to the next one. Like you're doing
Yeah.
well, you're staying the whole game. And so that must have been a really exciting moment when, and you talk about that salivating, just waiting for that, wishing this kid slips. What's very interesting in this environment is that, like you were saying, we have an amazing relationship with each other. Everybody does, right? Like the team, for the most part, gets along very well outside of the field, at least in the teams that I've been in. We all
Mm-hmm.
get along. We all go out. We have fun, right? But when it comes to practice, like it's you versus me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I am looking for any opportunity for you to make a mistake just to guarantee my spot, and things can go either way every single practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've seen the starter that starts 9 games and then all of a sudden sits out the following 11 because
Yeah.
that one freshman that was just waiting for his opportunity all of a sudden becomes a scoring machine.
Yeah.
And it happens for the goalies. They have a few games of bad luck, and all of a sudden the new guy just he's been waiting for that opportunity and then just becomes a star. And so it sounded like that's what started to happen to you, right? Like you had this
Yeah.
opportunity.
I just needed that shot, just even for my own mental health. It was just like, man, I can do this. Like I can still do this. It's not it's not a fluke that I'm here.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, I posted up a shutout. We win that game, and we go into conference tournament time feeling good about ourselves, and now you put questions in the coach's head. Obviously, now moving forward, it didn't go in my direction, but now I knew that if I was ever called, like I just had won the team over as well, because that's huge. At least for us, like for goalkeepers, like you need the 10 guys in front of you to do their
Trust.
job for you as well.
Yeah.
So, and we go into conference time. We're rolling. We're smacking teams left and right, and we get to the final. Unfortunately, we lose, but um, that was like, okay, like that was a turning point for a lot of us, especially in my class. That like, hey, we don't need these other guys to do it, right? Like we can actually do this. Um, so now the off season's a little like and I say a little being nicer, but it's really different, for me, like I'm using that spring season to win a spot into August. Like you're already trying to play this ahead of time and visualize that, what you're doing back in February is gonna be a product and a result for August. And we get a coaching change. And for guys that are kind of on the fringe like me, like, oh man, I get a fresh slate. Like now it's game on. Like now these guys that had the protection of that head coach, like, it's not there. So that spring was awesome. Just preparing for it, trying to win a spot, playing a ton, like, playing big time schools. Like we played Rutgers and Fairleigh Dickinson in our area. Like, we're getting a brand new coach. Like now you can showcase yourself. So for me, like that was like a ton of weight removed off of me. And I put up a really good spring. I go into the summer. I actually fly down to Columbia to prepare. I went down for 5 weeks, and that was my focus. Like goalkeeping training every day, trying to get on the field. And, I think I was in the best shape possible. But coming to August, all three of us are really good. Like you kind of rolled the dice on any of us, and the three of us could have done our job. And we were a championship caliber team. We just had, everyone that played the final the year before was coming back. So, we didn't. You don't see what you don't see what you see now with people jumping ships. Like it's and we stayed. So it was great. But now, like I said, like the three of us come in super prepared because now we just don't know who it's gonna be. They end up going with the kid that was starting the year before, and I'm heartbroken at this point. And the other guy too, like the other guy and I became really good friends. Like to this day, like we kind of looked at each other. We were like, nah, man, like these can't be real life. Like we outplayed, there's days like you said before, like you outplay each other and there was more positives and negatives in everyone's bank account, right? And it wasn't us. And we were just like, man, this is crazy. Like now you get start creeping into doubt again. Like this whole vicious cycle starts all over again. Like, man, when am I going to be the one? Like who is going to be the, like, what do I need to do to convince someone? But that year, like a little bit more level-headed, I guess, from the previous. I'm going to say like spiral, but it's like, okay, this kid, about around this time, mentally starts to shut off and precisely. And again, I get my shot. 2-3 games of shutouts. I split time with the third string keeper, and we're now again heading into stride for conference finals. That year we were going down to Disney, so every team in the conference made it. We were the second seed. We had smoked the first seed in Loyola, Maryland, like at home, like played unbelievable. So we're feeling good about ourselves going into it. And we go sit down, the third string keeper and I with the starting keeper. We were like, what's going on? And he went with the guy. Okay, all right, just know that we're ready. He unfortunately has a not good of a tournament, right? And a couple blunders into the quarterfinals and semis. And unfortunately, took those blunders into the final, and we lose the final 1-0 against a very good team, right?
Yeah.
And here we are thinking our season's over. Like we're flying back from Orlando, like, oh man. Now we're just kind of beating ourselves up. Like, what else did we need to do? Like we won 15 games that year. Like, how wasn't it not only your time to win, but my time to play, right? On the individual side. And we get a magical call on Tuesday after that Sunday. the next following Tuesday, we get a magical call. We're the last team in as in a large bid to the NCAA's. So now think like small school in Jersey City, man, with no more than 2,000 people, like going into the dance and like, all right, let's get after it. And again, like that sense of hope of like, all right, he put 3 games of like, am I going to be the one going into, UVA to start this game? And unfortunately, it wasn't my turn again. We end up losing that game. Like, played extremely well, like for a small school going into the ACC, like, and putting up a fight in the first round. We were like, okay, we can definitely do this. So, but now you wonder, like, I got 1 year left. What now? Like, I'm about to graduate school, right? Like, do I stay? Do I go? Do I get my master's somewhere else? All the guys that I came up with, unfortunately, due to graduation and circle of life, like they left the school. I'm like, man, I'm like the only one left.
Yeah.
So that spring also, a little bit of a crossroads, still trained, got myself into shape, played a ton in that spring as well, played really well, and just sat down with him. I'm like, hey man, I just need you to be honest. Like, I'm not 18 or 19, I'm 23. Like, treat me as an adult, like shoot me straight. Like, what's the scenario? And he straight up told me, he goes, listen, I'm looking for a number 1. I don't think the 2 of you are good enough for, where we're going. And legit, like, there was goalkeepers staying in my room, and like that was the nature of it. And so because of graduation, I didn't need a release form. I was going to finish off school and, go elsewhere.
Just to give a
but I
little
bet
bit
on myself.
Yeah. To give everybody a little bit of background or some knowledge about how this rolls, right? Like your team goes into a conference, right? So there's all these conferences around the states, and then the top teams from each conference then make it to the NCAA tournament, which is a country's, the best of the best play this big tournament, right? And that's how you get your national champion. But you also get like a wild card seed if you have a good record as well. And it sounds like that's what you guys got. For those players get 4 years of eligibility. If you sit out a year, you can play a 5th year. Some players take some time off in Division 1. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can play Division 1 up until 25 years old. Correct?
Yep.
For Division 2, I don't believe there's an age limit. Right. So you have players that go elsewhere and then come back at like age 27. And that's why sometimes Division 2 soccer is actually really good, because you have these older players that come back, a few years later after they try to play somewhere else in the world and it doesn't work out for them. They could always go back to school. And so you have players in their masters, right? For goalkeepers, I believe, and at least in my experience, they were a little older always. You guys were always, you get your 21, 23-year-old goalkeeper all the time. So your coach says no, that you're not going to be a starter, just gives it to you straight, which is probably a good thing, right? What do you do next? What do you do next?
So, now I think to myself, like, do I bet on myself and win out whomever it is, right? Like, I've got something in the bank that shows that I'm capable of doing it, or do I look elsewhere for the opportunity? And it's funny, in this whole conversation, we still haven't spoken scholarship. I'm on zero money.
Yeah.
I'm on zero money. Like, I'm playing for the hell of it. And that's what's crazy about this whole process. It's like, it goes back to paying to play.
You're not attached, right? Like, there's no attachment.
No, and they're not attached to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not attached to them, and they're not attached to me. So, I think long and hard, and I bet on myself. I bet on myself, and just see what happens, right? Like, it's my last year. I want to play, and at that point, priorities start to shift. You're trying to see the bigger picture here and trying to set yourself up for the next chapter. And At that point, I wasn't about burning bridges. I just don't know, what could come off of having a good relationship with this coach would take me to, right? So I go down back again to Colombia, prepare myself, and then it kind of ended up snowballing for my coach, but in my favor, right? The two goalkeepers he was looking at aren't eligible. So now, like, the same scenario that happened to me happened to these two kids. They just had the consciousness of a good person that he placed them in junior college, right? To go get the grades up instead of sitting a full year, which happened to me. And then I show up, it's me and the other kid that, we've been battling now for 4 years, and it's just me and him. And he goes into preseason not telling anyone that he had not a knock, he had a meniscus tear, right? And then the third string keeper was there just to be there, like he wasn't good enough. So now it's me, like, hey man, I ended up staying and rolling the dice, and it worked out, and prepared great during that preseason. Obviously, not knowing the pressure, not having the pressure that there was someone else behind me waiting for me to slip up. So I played free, played happy, like first one in, last one out type of mentality. Like, I was thrilled, man, and then I'm gonna say murderer's row of our first 3 games. Like, we give up 9 goals in 3 games, and now I'm like, it May, right? Like, now you're, you go down to UConn, lose 4-0, and you're looking around like, was it May? You go to Seton Hall right across the road, like, you lose 5-2. Like, again, is it May? Like, I'm getting no feedback whatsoever at this point, right? Like, game 3 comes around, we play Rutgers, and I post that first shutout. I was like, all right, like, that's what we needed. That's what we needed, and it really set the tone for the rest of the year. And I guess God had other plans for me. I dislocated my shoulder going 12, so my career was over.
Oh man.
Yeah, how crazy is that? So, playing extremely well.
For everybody that thought
And
that was gonna be a beautiful story, it
no,
doesn't
man,
really work out like
that's
that
but that's
sometimes.
life. That's
And
life.
that's how it is, man. That's how it is. That
Yeah,
is
I had my
wild.
little guy. I wanted to come say hi.
Hey, ¿cómo
This is
estás?
Cruz.
Cruz.
This is my second one, my 1-year-old.
Where's Valentino?
So how
Stool.
crazy is that? We're about to start conference, and I dislocate my shoulder. And it's crazy because I had this injury before, when I was 16, got it repaired, everything felt great, like, never had like some sort of fall or injury to it, or just soreness, like nothing. And in an odd contact, I fall wrong and my shoulder pops out. And I even went up to my coach, I'm like, hey, like, it's over. Like, that's it. A few days later, we prepared to go to Monmouth. I'm on the bench. I'm dressed, like, not as a backup, just dressed in my regular clothes. Now the starter that became my backup, now he's starting again, and he does well. Like, now I'm just like, man, I just want a championship at this point, right? Like now my injury made that perspective. Like, man,
Yeah.
I'm just pulling for my teammates. Like,
Yeah.
let's see this through. And then the starter conference got ugly. Like, we were just splitting everywhere. We would win one, lose one, and win one, lose one. And my coach turned around and we're like, we're not the same. Like, are you good to go? Yes or no? I was like, guy, like, my bone was out my back. Like, what do you mean I'm ready to go? Right? Like, he goes, nah, like, the team's not reacting the same way, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just don't know what to do. Like, he's grasping for answers. I was like, hey man, I've got nothing to lose, but this happens again, I'm done. And the athletic trainers, preparing me, trying to just get me to be competent at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Um, But then, I prepare myself to go and I'm not getting the start. So there was a segment of that conference schedule that we hit easier games that on your schedule are like, all right, these are 2 wins, right? Like we can play poorly and we're that
Yeah.
much better than,
Yeah.
and I don't get the start. Okay, this is odd, right? Like you're forcing me to come back and I'm not getting the start. Okay, do
It's a
my
mind
job,
game.
number 2, ready to go, whatever. And he starts me in a game that we need to win with no minutes. So I'm almost a month without any minutes, right? Like I go out of there, like I go through my preparation, but my preparation's different now. Like just I'm nursing an injury. Now it's here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like one bad move, I come out for a cross, I get bumped. I don't know how my body's gonna react in a need to win situation on the road. Um, I end up doing okay. We lose 1-0, and now this season gets a little murky, and I get the nod the rest of the way. I don't know how I ended up playing those last 4 or 5 games, um, because really like now it's just stuck. Like one bad move and my shoulders coming out again. Um, we went 9-8 and failed to make it to playoffs. Like we went 5-4 in the conference, and a game that we dropped that we needed to win, kind of midway through, and we didn't make it by a goal. Like that's what took it away from us, a goal. Like we're tied with the 4th place team, and they got a better goal against average than us. So that marks the end of my career. But it's funny, while I'm doing all this, I'm coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coaching little kids. I'm seeing it as an opportunity for a salary and offset some of those costs at school. But I'm coaching. I'm around guys that have coached for years and coached at the depths of 3-year-olds and loved every second of it. So that's where my lifetime, turned into coaching right after graduation. I got a full-time employment at the club that I was at, which was at Albertson Soccer Club at the time. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the capacity that it used to exist back when I was there. And we just got the ball rolling, coaching girls, boys, coaching the goalkeepers, doing summer camps, just being highly involved. But just playing, I got my surgery to repair my shoulder, but playing was never now a factor. I was at peace with it.
So you made peace when you were done. You were okay with it, or how
And
how
I
did you
say
take that?
peace, but yeah, I say peace, but it was more of a love-hate relationship. And you and I have spoken about that privately. Like, I love the coaching after graduation. I love the coaching. I love being a part of it. I still wanted it in my life. You cannot get me to play a game.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, didn't matter if it was 11 of my best friends, like, hey, let's go play. I I had it. I was done.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm done. It hurt to come to that realization, right? But I could never compare the day to day of being in that grind in that college setting. And I can't even imagine what pros go like once it comes to making that decision. Like, I had it at a very low level, like, and
Mm-hmm.
I had that come to terms moment. Um, I hated it. Hated it. Didn't matter. Like, I can make $100 a game playing outdoors. I didn't want to do it.
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I was done.
It's interesting because when I look back at it, right, like I obviously dealt with it in a very different way, and you got to experience some of it. And I think at that point, for me, it just seemed like fun. Like when I went to New York, I was done. My career was done, right? Like, and I think all of you knew that, and it was great for me to be able to continue to play. And I dealt with injuries as well, and it was just one of those things where it's like, here we go again. Oh, here we go
Hmm.
again, right? A lot of that was my fault too, and I didn't want to believe that for a very long time. I blamed everybody else but myself. Looking back now, like it was a lot of it was myself. But it was heartbreaking when that day comes because that door shuts off. It shuts so quick. Like after college, you're not going anywhere. Like once it's done, it's done. It's very rare do you see few players that make it out, try out here and there. Yeah, maybe you'll play some second division in some other country or some indoor soccer or something like that. But what's interesting about the soccer, the U.S. soccer system, and I was talking about this yesterday to some other parent of the kids that we coach, is some of the change that I'm seeing right now, which I think is great, right? Like all these big professional veterans coming into the MLS. I hope that they bring in the academy system and they start funding, a different system, because when you're 21 or when you're 23, you're too late. It's done. Like
Yeah.
the guys are getting picked up at 16 years old, 18 years old. Like at 21, these guys already have 5, 6 years on you. It's going to be really hard for you to be able to
Yeah.
make it out, right? Like, and nobody tells you that, right? And we live on this half dream that really realistically happens, right? Because we think we're going to. There was no doubt in my head that I wasn't going to make it, and then now that you start looking at it as an adult, you start realizing like, well, that makes no sense. Like it absolutely makes no sense, right? If you're not on a professional team at 18 or at 16, the chances get very, very minimal really quick.
Yeah.
Um, and then you end up getting tossed around. You just
Yeah.
get tossed around, and it's tough. It's a very tough place to be in. But I also think that, and now like we talk about like the depression that happens after soccer. Obviously, you stayed in soccer, which I think helped a lot, but they couldn't get you to play. I didn't play for like 8 years after college, right? I didn't even coach. I didn't even want to see a soccer ball or think about soccer, right? And when Luca was born, that changed everything for me. It reintroduced soccer back into my life. But man, it is difficult, and that's one of the things that I try to teach the kids now, and try to talk to them at 14, even though it's hard for them to understand. Like your door closes very quickly, and your life is going to take a massive shift. Um,
Hmm.
and so I would much rather have someone tell me that earlier than tell you like, no, it's going to be great. You're going to be this, you're going to
Yeah.
be that, because I walked into it thinking like, yeah, I'm going to be a professional athlete. I was already banking on what country I was going to go play at. Like, you know what I mean? But life takes a huge turn, and this is reality. Like, this is what happens as adults as well. Like, life will take a huge turn, and whatever you had planned for yourself might not work out. But you have to be able to take the lessons that come with that, right? You being able to get told no and no and no and no and no over
Yeah.
again, right? Even though you knew you were good enough. But it was based on somebody else's opinion, unfortunately. And that's very, very difficult as a young adult, right?
Yeah.
Because
And I think also that self talk, right? Like that self reflection component. Um, and it's funny because like you always get this question like, oh, like, are you good enough to play pro? No,
yeah,
like I wasn't good enough to play pro. I didn't do the things that it took to be a pro, right? I did what I needed to do in that time, right? Like I showed up 6 days a week to practice. But was I doing enough for myself? Was I eating right? You know, was I listening to the feedback and trying to modify my behaviors to get to that point? No, like, and that's the reality is we're not honest with ourselves because we're holding on to this dream, and like the dream is going to become a reality if the work's in, right? Like the dream is going to happen. I'm not saying that you need to sacrifice your life for it, but like you need to put a part of your life, to it. Um, no, for me, it was like
Yeah.
I thought I was just good enough to get there. And
Yeah.
now, like almost turning 40, I was like, I wasn't good enough. Like
There's no way.
I thought I could look back on my flaws and name every single one of them and be okay with this. Like, and be okay that I'm having this conversation with myself. Um, I just wish someone, to your point, said that to me before, like, hey, work on this, and that, and maybe you have a chance. No,
Right.
I wasn't good enough.
Yeah. And I think that's the big part, right? Like you look at it now and because you've done other stuff in your professional life now and seen the like we can go into your professional life how it's changed and how much success you had in your professional life because now you are doing the things that you're supposed to be that professional that you become, right? In your
Yeah,
career. Like if you would apply the same way to your soccer, maybe you did have a chance. But now looking back, you're like, yeah, there's a lot. I was so far off. Like there were so many things I wasn't doing. And
yeah,
same thing with me, right? Like I was partying all the time. Like, yeah, maybe I had the talent, but the discipline in outside of the field or whatever happened from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Like I was a whole nother person. Like
yeah,
professionals, and some of them get away with it, right? But obviously majority of them and that's probably something that we can talk about like now that you coach college and you've seen some players go off, right? We got to coach some girls too or Sam that made it to the national team because you and I coached together at
hmm,
the master's school and you can just tell who's gonna make it like you know like she
yeah.
was
I mean, the investment of you know of we were lucky to see it up front, right? Like the 5 a.m. wake ups and training, the academic prowess that her as a professional she went through, betting on herself and transferring from Boston College to Penn State, and knowing that what she wanted to do it. Like, man, I think in those 2 years we coached her, she taught more she taught more to us than we could have to her.
yeah
um and and that's part of being a human being as well. Like, there's no statute of limitations on years. Like, just because I'm the adult in this equation doesn't mean that a 14, 15-year-old doesn't know more than I do. Because again, it's just the type of character and upbringing that they bring to the table, and we got to
yeah
see that up front. Like, just the determination, the resilience, like sacrificing being part of of her high school team that she knows she could have had major success at, uh, to make it to the national stage, and now being starting center midfielder for the Portland Thorns. Like
yeah
what more can you ask for a kid like that?
And she also did have an amazing support system, right? Obviously, like you can see the difference in that too. And I think in comparison to some of us, and maybe we can tap into that as well, right? Like they obviously had an amazing school. They had an amazing, like, I think we learned a lot through our experience that we were able to apply to those girls. So, um, but the parents are involved and stuff like that, and just a very disciplined and different type of lifestyle that she lived. Um, and you know, what about the type of guys like how we grew up, right? Like, what about the kids that I'm currently coaching, where maybe perhaps the parents are not as involved because they never experienced the next level, or they're barely making ends meet, so they're always working. So the kids are
Yeah,
around loose on their own, right? And it really comes down to us, the coaches and the mentors, to guide them. Um, what advice would you have to a young 14, 15-year-old kid?
that is a great question, right? Like, just looking around, like, we're fortunate to have, come from a two-parent household, right? Like, that right there is a leg up. Like,
Yeah,
let's be real. Like,
yeah,
not everyone has that luxury, right? Like, Not everyone has the luxury of one. So, like, yeah, understanding that there's going to be different head starts, but it's what you do with it, right? Like, the biggest thing, surround yourselves with adults that have your best interests, so, and be okay with making mistakes. Like, those are going to guide you to the solutions, right? If we knew the solutions from the from the jump, we'd be perfect beings, and we're not. Like, we learn from these mistakes, and surround yourself with a village. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, surround yourself with a village that wants to see you succeed, um, and give as much as you take. Because it's not always give, 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 and take, take, take. It's got to be a two-way street, right? And chase it. Honestly, chase it. Like, if that's what you want to do and you know it, chase it from the jump. Because it's like, you just don't know when that clock stops. You just don't know when it stops ticking. Like, that door can shut down tomorrow, but give it, give it your, give it everything. As cliche as it sounds, like, it's like, commit yourself to it. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice if you want to be a college player, or you want to be a pro player, or or you honestly, or you want to be the best guy in Sunday league. Like, um, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because it's the more you give, the more you're going to be able to take down the road.
Yeah. It's a huge sacrifice, and I think it's a huge gamble too, right? Like, you're gambling. There is no definite yes, there's no definite no, but you have to be okay with gambling. I see a lot of young kids that just want to stay local for the fear of like spending too much money or not making it. But if you're not willing to do that right now, you're not going to
You're
do it
never going to
later
do
on.
it.
There's no switch that you just turn on from one day to the other. And that's one of the biggest advice that I give a lot of the kids. It's like, don't go where your parents want you to go because it's close and because just in case you fall, you can be caught, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was go as far as you can, go to the other side of the
Yeah.
country and figure it out. And, it was very difficult to figure it out on my own. Like you said, I found my village, I found some people that guided me, and there's going to be people that are going to catch you and are going to kind of lift you up again. And you were one of those for me. Um, and you're going to continue to fall. But, looking back, like, I'm grateful I didn't hurt myself any further than what I did. Um, but now it's like, man, I have so much knowledge from all these mistakes that I've made, right? I've seen so many dark places. I've seen so many bad moments in my life that, like, now I'm like, a bad day for me is not too bad. You know what I mean? Like, man, I could have
Yeah.
gone
I
home.
mean,
I could have gone homeless so many times in New York. You know what I mean? Like,
I,
it's
I feel the same way. Like, I feel like, honestly, my darkest days aren't that dark. Like, I am thrilled at where I'm at. I can't wait to see what the future has in store for me and my family and career. Like everything, growing up is hard. Growing up is hard. Growing up is not the easiest thing. The easiest thing was, we had that shelter of playing football, and enjoying the companions that you had at the time, right? That camaraderie that you had, and you had your set of goals. But now it's like there's a much broader picture here, like, and it's a philosophical question, like, who do I want to be? Like, when people look back and be like, what type of person was I? And I think that's the legacy we can live, we can leave back, is that people you surrounded yourself with can look back and you and be like, yo, that person was someone's character, had a great personality, like, was in it for the best intentions, and obviously you're gonna get some gain out of it, right? Like, you don't get into careers and get to meet people, um, not thinking that there's gonna be a concept of some sort of gain, right? But, like, you get a, I gained you in this relationship, right? Like, I gained not only a friend but like a family member, um, and not many people can say that. So so it's that, man. It's just, what do you want to leave back, and who do you want to be moving forward?
Yeah, 100%, man. And looking at your career path, obviously, right? Like I was saying, like how do you do all of this, right? And how do you become, um, an assistant principal to a predominant white school? And we always talk about it. Like it's some of these places that we've been in, like what I mean? How did we end up there? Um, and it's all that persistence that you've learned.
Yeah, I got really comfortable with no's. I got really comfortable with no's. I was saying that to a colleague of mine back when when I got the promotion. People feel a certain way, of track record and years and seniority and this, that, the other thing. And I just turned around and said, hey, like, yeah, that person was deserving as well, and I'll be the first one to say it. But how many no's in my career do you know about? How many times did I try and try and try and never got, like, and I think that's what the whole college situation taught me, right? Like, it's just like, you need to be comfortable with no, but what are you going to do with it? Right. Like, and how did I get there? Weird things in life, honestly, weird things in life. And you got to witness it a bit. Like, how does a school, private school, need a goalkeeping coach? And I'm right down the block, right? Working at Mercy College and trying to make a couple extra grand, to take home. And that turned into a part-time job, turned into a full-time job, turned to a title change. And, and now we're navigating waters a little bit differently. Um, and especially during
20 years.
20 years. Yeah, like if I talk to my 20-year-old self, I don't think this was a reality. I would have never thought this was the reality. But yeah, I got comfortable with a lot of no's and just knocking down doors and knocking on doors, and like I said before, just tagging along with people that may open something for me down the road, and just being diligent and being a good person. like um and I ended up at a private school, right? And that, for whatever reasons, I kind of fit the mold of what they were looking for at certain times, and just kept evolving. And now I'm here. Now, I'm the assistant principal at a very prestigious prep school in the area. Uh, and I hope I can, I'll have people tagging along with me and learning from me a little bit, and I'm able to open those doors for, at least for my kids, but
Yeah.
open the doors for other, Hispanics and community members, and like.
Yeah. Well, I think your
Well, I
your
think
story
your
is very
story is very
inspiring,
inspiring,
and it
and it
obviously,
obviously,
it shows
it
what
shows what
perseverance does,
perseverance
right?
does, right?
And
And
to bring it
to
back
bring it
to
back to
the
the
19-year-old
19-year
you,
old you,
you were looking for
you were looking for
stability.
stability.
You use
You
soccer
use
as a
soccer as a
vehicle,
vehicle,
and
and
soccer brought all
soccer
these
brought all
lessons
these
along the
lessons along
way,
the way,
right? And it,
right?
it
And
shaped
it
you
shaped
into
you
this
into this
person that you are
person that you
now.
are now.
And I mean,
And
look
I
at you
mean, look at
now,
you
right?
now,
Like,
right?
Yeah.
like let's have a
Let's
little
have a
bragging
little bragging
moment, right?
moment.
Like, you're an assistant principal. Like, people look up
People
to
look
you.
up to you.
You're a leader.
You're a
You're an
leader.
example to a lot of
To a lot
kids.
of
Like,
kids,
a
like
lot of
a lot of
kids
kids
look forward
look
to seeing
forward
you
to
every
seeing
day,
you
and
every
that is
day,
the
and that is
probably
the
highlight
probably
of their
highlight
day.
of their day. And I'll be honest, like, I'm more happy to see them on a daily basis than they are of me. um, just again, like, you want to feel like you belong, and we circle back to that. Like, I found I found the career path that led me to a community that I want to be in, that my family wants me to be in, right? Um, that for higher powers want me to be a part of. So I'm thrilled at the opportunity, and like I said, I just I think the kids do more for me than I do for them in regards to just lessons learned and adapting to the day to day of our new reality. Because now I'm the old guy, right? Like I'm the old guy on the porch sitting down, right, and protecting the block a little bit. Those kids are keeping me fresh on ideas and creative, and um, I'm just thrilled to be able to work in a setting that if I change one life and and give myself an opportunity to keep learning, I'm good.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I'm super happy for you. Um, you know, obviously we'll be seeing you soon. But
Yeah.
it's interesting to be able to catch up and reflect on life and speak in a very different way because the last conversation you and I had was in New York and it was probably at some club. We're having very different conversations, and I think the last 12 years for both of us were very transformed. Our lives completely transformed. We became fathers. Um, there's just so much change that's happened, and now we're being able to use our stories to help other people,
Yeah.
help other kids, hopefully, right? And so, if you had something for the kids, like obviously I have younger kids that are trying to get into the next level, and the next level we're talking about college. What are some of the things like they can work on right now? Like you have freshmen and sophomores. What do
Mm-hmm.
they need to be doing right now? And what are some of the things that you look for in a college player? Like,
Yep.
what are some of the things that you also don't even like? You're like, I don't want to deal with it.
I mean, the things that you don't want, right? Like just like that undisciplined, lack of character, like like general kind of societal rules, right? Like honestly, be a good person, do what you need to do, right? Like there's not like hustle, like just work hard, like that will never be like those are non-negotiables for me. Like
Mhm.
um but now like play, like play not only the days that you have to go to practice, like just play, go back like go back literally 20 years, like go back to that, go play on the streets. Like we don't see enough of that, like we don't see enough creativity, we don't see enough, like everything's so structured, A leads to B leads to C, and this is how we score a goal. Like no, like there's not, I don't see enough like wanting to beat you 1v1 and being comfortable with that. Like, want the ball, make a mistake with the ball, create a relationship with the ball. Like, that doesn't happen. And this is coming from a goalkeeper. Like, I don't want to see the ball. Like,
Yeah.
because if I see the ball, I'm coming, most likely 80% of the time it's based on danger, right? Um, but yeah, like, man, if you're a goalkeeper, play the field. Like, get your touches up, being able to create an amazing relationship with the ball. Like the tactics are going to come, and I think playing unrestricted will show you a lot of the tactical awarenesses that you need. Because it's very easy to go to a chalkboard and show you what to do, right? And again, I'm dating myself by saying chalkboard, but we can go, we can go watch tape, we can go, and that's a lot more structured. But I think being able to have that free knowledge and that free soccer IQ that comes from playing, I think we're lacking. Um, 'Cause again, we see kids, and I'm coaching at a small Division 2 level and helping out at a small Division 2 level, and and it's just easy to rely on the international kid because they play. Like, like that's now another factor you've got to overcome. Like, you got to deal with guys that are coming overseas to take over your spot. So it's like, we don't need that when we're in a massive country in the way in the country that we live in. Like there's talent out there and there's a home for everybody too. Like
Yeah.
that's the one thing this country provides is like there's a college for everybody if you want to do it. Just navigate that and navigate your expectations and play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think obviously taking care of the basics, right? Like academics. You
Yeah.
gotta have academics.
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately,
that's that's the name of the game.
yeah. Understand the game, right? Like there's certain rules you can't bypass.
No,
Academics is one of them.
yeah,
So
academics is
take care of
we
that, and you will find the team.
yep, we look because of like I help on at Felician University, small Division II school here in New Jersey, and like there's more money on the academic side than there is on the scholarship side, and people are not aware of that, right? And players are not aware of that because we're programmed, and we have programmed kids to believe that the only outlet to providing the financial stability at a school is a scholarship, right? But we don't know that your 4 years in high school could have given you $30,000 to cover your school. But we're expecting $30,000 to get covered by soccer. And that's where the mindset is wrong. So we look at kids that are high academics, 3.8 and above. The obviously the higher the better, because that's gonna trigger what the package is gonna look like, right? If you're a good player and I can't afford you, well, guess what? You're gonna be sitting home, like you're gonna be looking for another situation.
So as coaches, there's like some financial strategy, right? Like if you can take some of the weight off with academic money, you're able to get more players.
Exactly.
Right?
And or counterpart as well, right? Like I take a little bit here to pay that, like and you have to be super strategic with the allotted money. Like, we don't have the same amount of money as maybe, Dominguez Hills in California. That's a top Division II school. We don't have that money, right? And that's just an assumption, like not knowing how their program is ran, but they do so well that you kind of make the assumption of like they've got the financial means to do it. Sorry, my little guy's crying. But so it's that, like the higher the academics and the SATs, I know obviously that landscape's changed a bit, but the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
So, invest in yourself in the 4 years so someone else can invest in you for their 4 years. And be diligent about that.
Yeah, I think definitely going in with that mindset too, right? Like, yeah, I need my academics. And regardless if soccer doesn't work out, at least I have some degree that can get me places.
Yep.
Because there's a huge advantage going to 4 year school and going through, learning how to manage work, school, and soccer. Like it applies to the future.
Yep.
Right? Like this is why you could probably do 8 things at once.
Yeah, you just navigate time. I mean, I don't sacrifice too many boundaries. When it's family time, it's family time. When it's kind of strapped down and do some work, do some work. When it's my school day, it's my school day. And but those are all lessons learned by trying to figure it out and relying on people that have your back, because they'll show you ways that you maybe didn't think of. Because you're not the smartest person at the table. Like everyone else brings such a wealth of knowledge that being able to absorb and steal, like, and take that knowledge and make it work for you.
Yeah. And if you were to give one advice to coaches that are coaching these teams, what would what would you say the top 2 or 3 things would be to do as a coach to help these players move forward?
I think one, keep providing that care. Like no matter what, like keep providing that keep providing that care for the kid, and treat them as that. They're not adults. You can call them young adults all you want. Like care for them. Um, Show that you're loyal to them as well, right? Like I know it's a game and we're trying to win and we're trying to feed our egos as well, but like at the end of the day, you don't want to lose the kid for that. Like know the ins and outs of the kid, what works, what doesn't. That's going to make you a better coach. Like I know it takes, it takes doing that, 18 times, but know what the kid's about. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? Like you don't have to be all in their life, but like you said before at the start, like there's kids that don't have a next meal, right? Like you should know that. You should be aware of that. Like you should know what the family structure is, you know? Something as simple as their birthday. Like that goes a tremendous way. Keep learning too. Keep learning. Like coaching licenses, coaching courses, seminars, stuff online on YouTube. Like there's so much knowledge out there that just needs to be explored, and take what works for you and what doesn't. Like what philosophy you have over coaching and kids, and apply what the knowledge is out there. I think you and I got this a lot from you. It's just like it's just research, ask questions, dig deep, go in the rabbit hole for a little bit, right? Like um because you might find that one gem that's going to change the way you coach. Um, and lastly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Like people want to have this perfect image, and we're far from that. Like like I don't walk around like the big man on campus. Like I don't, because I know someone else is going to have something that I don't have, and I want to learn from that. So like be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And welcome feedback. And at the end of the day, you're a team, right? Like if parents have a situation, a complaint, take that for what it is. It's just feedback to make you and your program better and make your kids better. And lastly, like especially at the club level, when you're dealing with parents and high schools and stuff, it's like you're all on the same team. Don't ever lose sight of that, right? Like parents are the kids' biggest cheerleaders, but they're their biggest protectors. So that's where any feedback or constructive criticism is coming from, is the protection of their child, because they want to believe that you're on their same team. And honestly, we all are. And vice versa, parents, like, if you haven't trusted an adult with your child, trust that that they're doing the right thing for your kid, and have an honest conversation. An honest conversation will open a lot of doors to transparency.
Some wise words right there. And it had nothing to do with soccer.
No, no, it's just life. Like we just learn life through a ball, um, and we encounter the same way we got to problem solve on the field. We got to problem solve in life, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like we can just see many doses of learning moments during the day, and sport being one of them. So I'm thrilled to still be involved. Obviously my career path completely different, but um it's something that I love, and it's something that like I cherish. And I get into family arguments on how much I love it, but it's who I am and who I've become, and thanks to a sport that honestly like has given it all to me. And again, I'm not a pro player, I'm not a pro coach, like, but man, it's given me such a life. So I'm completely grateful for all that too.
That's amazing,
That's
man.
amazing, man.
It's
It's
beautiful,
beautiful,
and it's amazing
and
what
it's
soccer
amazing
can
what
do
soccer
for
can
people.
do for people.
That one
Right?
little
That
ball,
one little ball.
it
Yeah,
just
and
changes our entire life.
entire life. And again, I'm thrilled, at a near future to go see your community and what you're doing with them, because again, it's like for me, seeing you and what you've created in partnerships, as a family man, like, man, like, I'll say it. I'll take 22 of you right now, like, in my life and in my circle, that I know, like, we'll go to battle and we'll figure it out, like. And I hope people in the community that you're serving right now get to see that side of you, man. Like, biggest thing, you're loyal. You know, you're committed to a program. You're committed to right now the kids and the adults, and you're committed to having people flourish, and what you missed out maybe growing up, like, you're offering that to the world. And I hope people see that, like, again, like, I'll go, like, you're one of the people in my life that I'll go to battle with right now, and, like, no questions asked. Like, you could be wrong for all I care, and I'm there. And again, and that's the one of the best things that this ball has left me is a ton of relationships. So, like, we've spoken about so many different topics, but it kind of just keeps circling back on one, and it's just the sense of community, right? Like, the sense of belonging, and bringing something to the table. Some days more, some days less, some days nothing at all, but um, being wanted, being felt, being cared for, and reciprocating that. And I see that with these conversations. Uh, I hope that a lot of people around your circle right now, your immediate circle, can sense that as well.
Well, thank you, man. It's been a pleasure. It's been a long catch up, dude.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. We did it in this avenue. Like, I love, obviously, our private phone calls and text messages, and I think we're at a point in our relationship and friendship that we don't need to talk every day, but we know we're there. Man, I'm just thrilled to hopefully get to see Luca and the family together as a unit, and vice versa. You guys to get to see us. But again, thank you for opening the space, man. This is my first podcast, and I would never I'm thrilled you're the first one.
That's awesome, man. Well, it was a great podcast. You're a great speaker.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope you have a good day, man.
You too. Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone. Bye.